Hello, everyone. Oh, welcome to the very first episode of the Period Press. We had a little bit of a false start, but we're back. Also, technology, first time Riverside Virgin. So, for anyone that didn't know before, this is the Period Press. This is now a live episode of what was my newsletter, answering weekly questions from readers that I had. And I thought, well, I could make it a podcast and have actual guests on. So here I am. And I have with me Vicky Quinn Fraser. Welcome to the Period Press.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is very exciting.
Thank you for being here and for sticking with me through the technical issues. We had a moment where we might have live streamed to LinkedIn for a second, but that's finished very quickly when I realised what was happening.
I used to have a podcast and I used to have regular technical screw-ups, so it's all good.
I know, I've listened to it. You've got 300 and something episodes, so I feel very underprepared in comparison.
If that's the worst thing that happens to you while podcasting, you'll be doing fine.
Give me time. Anyway, I'm very, very, very pleased to have you here and having this conversation. We've been talking for ages on LinkedIn, and I was just when you was more podcasts, please. And I was yes, I know exactly the conversation we're going to have. So for anyone that doesn't know you, the brilliance that is Vicky Quinn Fraser, please do tell.
Thanks. That was a really nice introduction. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser. I'm the microbook magician, and I'm a non-fiction book coach, writing coach, and author. And I teach people how to use the voices that they already have, sometimes buried deep inside, to make good trouble. Basically, to use their voices to make things happen, to make people think differently or at all is always good, and to write that book that's been trying to claw its way out of them.
That's how I found you, because I do have a book that's been trying to claw it. I bought my special fancy keyboard that goes with my tablet so I could write anytime, anywhere. But the spicy hyperfocus lasted 5 minutes and it hasn't returned since. But I trust that it will, because it's still trying to claw itself out of me.
I kind of got good news and bad news for you on that front. You have to kind of make it happen, and it is possible to do that with a brain, because I'm autistic ADHD, so I know exactly what it's like to want to do something and be completely paralyzed. So
yeah, I know. Your newsletters are brilliant, and you always have this little bit of advice. It's if you got to make the time happen, even if you just put 10 minutes in and do 10 minutes of writing. Yeah. I've got a constant reminder that comes up every day. It's 10 minutes of writing window, and every time there's something that I'm doing, but I really, I need to I don't know, set 3 alarms or do another thing, but it needs to happen because it needs to come out. So I thought it would be really interesting to have a bigger conversation, more about that, about periods and writing and creativity, about how we tap into creativity, what we do when we get a blank page, a blank mind, a bleeding body, all of the things all together.
Yeah.
So I thought we would talk more about that, your tips and tricks for getting into writing and stopping the blank page. Yeah. But there's a question since this is the first episode, it's the question that I want to ask going forward. Next time I'll say it's the question I always ask. But the question I want to start with is, do you remember your first period?
I do not, and I feel like that's probably I'm probably the worst person to have as the first person on, because I don't have that many memories I really struggle with memories from my childhood, which apparently is quite common for people with neurodivergent brains. So no, I don't remember, but I do remember some of the stuff that goes around then. I do remember calling my mom in a panic when I was quite young because there was blood in my knickers. but that was, I think it was because I rode horses when I was a kid, and apparently that can happen because it can
Yeah,
like break the hymen or
yeah.
something. So I think that's probably what happened. But I do remember my mom awkwardly giving me a package of information. So rather than talking to me about it herself, I'm of that generation where parents just did not talk about stuff like that because it was embarrassing and all of that bullshit. So I do remember her giving me a package of stuff, and I can still see the little booklet in my head, and I can still see all of the information that was in it, which is really interesting. But no, I cannot remember my first period.
That's so interesting. And do you know, I thought I wanted to ask this question. The reason behind it is because I don't. And like, considering I am the period princess, it really frustrates me that I can't remember my first period. And I've even gone back to try and see like journals. So I knew I used to keep journals, but then I remembered in a kind of impulsive, spicy, I don't need these things anymore. I think I put them all in the bin.
Oh no, I burnt my journals as well, and I regret it.
I know. It's one of those like, we don't need this to hold us back, and then you don't really think, and then before you know it, it's all burnt or in the bin. And yeah, and I don't really, I know I can remember subsequent periods, but not the very first one. And all I do know is that my mum wasn't there at the time. My dad was, and he said apparently that I had told him, and in a not knowing what to do way, and in a lovely way. And what he did was gave me like a big hug and like celebrations and congratulations on being a woman. And apparently I just shot him a look of death and stormed out.
Because teenager, right?
Yeah, as a teenager. But I was about 14. And yeah, and then I think my parents said that I'd hid all my sanitary pads in the bin, but obviously that they had kind of worked out what was going on. Yeah, I was absolutely horrified that my dad should celebrate and congratulate me.
Though.
I know.
What a lovely memory to have, even if you didn't appreciate it at the time.
No, horrible teenager. But yeah, and then that's all I really remember. And I remember other ones. My mum had TSS, toxic shock syndrome, and she had it from a tampon, which is it's blood poisoning basically. So I had like a deep-seated fear of tampons. So I was definitely pads, and I do remember being like, I don't want anyone to see them, and that kind of like carrying on.
You tied it up your sleeve at school and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was just a time we didn't talk about those things, and to just reflect the time and the sort of misinformation or lack of information we got. I remember the first time I ever shaved my legs, I put Imac on and then used a razor to shave them off, because I thought that's what you did, because it looked like foam, but it wasn't. Yeah. So I think my mum found me and she was like, what are you doing?
I remember my mum finding me shaving my legs for the first time, and she was really upset, not because not for any kind of reason of shame or anything, but she was just like, this is just going to be the bane of your life for so many years, and if you left it a bit longer, you might not have had to do it so much. And I now wish that I had listened to her, because it's
voice echoing forevermore every time you shave. Oh my goodness. Oh, poor little naive us. Yeah, sometimes I wonder like how much of my experience was just regular, how much was like misinformed in the 90s, how much was spicy. Like, it's really hard to know, our little naive brains. Yeah. Great. So that, I knew it would be a good question to get started. I think I just wanted to ask everyone because I don't remember. So I love hearing people's first period stories, and it really changes, I think, like over generation to generation as well. So I hope going forward we'll get a few new ones.
Yeah, and from culture to culture as well, I think, because I know that in some cultures it is celebrated in kind of the way that your dad did, and it was like, oh, you're becoming a woman, or changing or whatever. And for me, it was just such a non-event. It was just like, oh, okay, that's happened, and move on, carry on. And it just didn't register with me as it being anything particularly monumental. It was just, oh, that's more biology, fine, whatever. Inconvenient, annoying, extremely painful sometimes, but whatever.
Yeah, I think it's nice to celebrate it. Like, I've got friends and clients, with children who have got lovely practices that they do. One client I had, she used to buy her daughter a bunch of flowers every day of her first day of her bleed. And I was like,
Oh,
that's so lovely. That's like the nicest thing. In a way that's not very like in your face, but just a little bit of, it's a
yeah,
moment. It's a special moment.
it is.
Okay, so moving on. Talking about creativity and mind blocks and periods. I mean, I talk a lot. I mean, till I'm blue in the face. Pretty much all I talk about is the cycle and how we sort of access different parts of our energy in different times of the cycle. And so I'm curious, like, has charting and tracking been part of your life? Like, have you noticed those ups and downs, or is it just as it comes?
No, it's really interesting because it's only, I mean, for context, I'm 46 years old, and until the last probably 10 years, I knew so little about menstrual cycles and stuff like that because I'm a child of like the 80s and 90s, and we weren't told anything. Like, it was utter shit. Like, we were treated, it was rubbish. And so it never occurred to me, and like nobody ever talked about in PE at school or anything like that. Oh, you might struggle today because this is where you are in your cycle. You might not feel as strong, or today you might feel stronger. And it wasn't until probably the last 10 years or so that I've started to A, notice the differences, B, actually learn anything about it at all. And so it's been really, really interesting for me. So no, I haven't tracked it, but kind of I do notice. I'm better at noticing now when I'm like, oh, today I'm filled with rage and I want to smash a window. And then it's like, okay, maybe I'm due on in a couple of days. Or like, oh, I'm really struggling to, like, in the gym, I can't lift as much as I would normally lift. So what's going on there? And I'll be really annoyed, and then I'll be like, wait a minute, where am I in my cycle? Maybe that's why, and that's okay, because the trend is up, but it's just like a wiggly line instead of a straight line. And maybe other days I'll be like, literally cannot form a thought, or catch a thought or whatever. And so I'll be like, okay, well, maybe there's no point in trying to do this today. Maybe today is a day where I just obey my VA for once in my life and put all of my invoices in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, if you don't have like scope of it, I mean, charting and tracking has been the cornerstone of my life, my business, my personal practices for the last sort of 6 years now. I couldn't imagine not knowing. Before, I had 3 rounds of the coil, so I didn't actually have a natural cycle before. My sort of awareness came with having my natural cycle after sort of 3 rounds of the coil. But so I didn't even have a period to kind of go off. But I did used to feel like this every sort of 5 to 6 weeks. It was quite spaced out, but there would just be this very low mood, and I'd be like, something wonky is going on here. It took me a while to kind of figure it out, but yeah, without that, I think even without periods, you kind of something's going on. Did you still have a sort of period to kind of help you make sense of that low mood, or was it like me?
That's really interesting, actually, because you say that. The face I made, by the way, is because I've heard so many horror stories of the coil, and the idea of having one fitted just makes me want to puke, frankly. So it's not something I've ever had. But I was on the pill for a long, long, long time, and I used to take it all the way through because it just used to be really annoying to have periods. So I just used to make sure that I didn't have them, and it is what it is. But and then I had to stop taking them because I got visual migraines, and they were like, oh, that puts you at a stroke risk, so you need to stop taking it. And I was like, wow. Okay, fair enough. So it was only about, I think, 15 years ago that I came off that, which probably coincides with the time I started noticing. So actually, it wasn't even that I didn't know anything, it was that I didn't have any periods or anything anyway, so I didn't notice any cycles because of all that stuff. And then I'd had there's all sorts. This is really interesting. So there's all sorts of other stuff as well. Like, I was on antidepressants for a while because I was extremely depressed, which, looking back now, is probably to do with the undiagnosed autism and a whole bunch of other stuff. But also, how much does being on the pill, a hormonal contraceptive, how much does that screw with you? Because there aren't that many studies on it because it's women's health, lol. And so yeah, there's just all sorts of reasons, really. But no, until the last 15 14 or 15 years, I didn't really even have a bleed to kind of, steer me in any direction. So I didn't understand anything about my body really. And it's only in the last kind of few years that I've really started to pay attention, because it's really helpful. But like you say, I think maybe tracking and stuff would be a really useful thing to do. So maybe I'll start doing that. Maybe that'll be a thing I start doing because of this podcast.
I hope so. I think everyone should chart. And I think what's more interesting for me is when we move away from the idea of charting and tracking to know when your period is going to arrive, and start charting to map your energy. So for energy mapping purposes, that's really interesting to me. I mean, knowing when your period is going to arrive, that's just a helpful benefit, an outcome of that. But yeah, it's more interesting, I think, to know when our energy is going to shift. So we have this like guide to map out our lives, to know like what I say all the time is when to push and when to pause, and kind of to understand when we need that downtime, because we do need downtime to integrate, to rest, to make space for more creativity even. And so I found like my own period and my own cycle really, well, it's my everything. It's just my guide. I don't know how I would function or when I would do things anymore. Even to how I listen to my music. I have a playlist for each phase of the cycle with a kind of different energy. It's fully ingrained in my life.
Really interesting. Now I'm intrigued. I feel like I'm going to start doing this, and then I'm just going to be angry that I hadn't done it before, and that I had not been doing it for years, because it just sounds like you're right. The idea of knowing, or having a good idea of like, I've planned this thing for this week, is that actually a sensible thing to plan for this week, or should I shift it a little bit, would be really useful, because the number of times that I have kind of beaten myself up for sitting here and basically banging my head against the desk for an entire day, because I'm like, I have to do this thing, instead of just, and my husband's great, because he'll be like, why don't you just go for a walk? Like, you're not being productive here. But I'll be like, no, I must punish myself and self-flagellate and sit at it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think there's different times when we can lean into creativity. I find it's a little bit easier in the second half of the cycle. So this comes with a few like caveats, because so the second half of the cycle being the sort of premenstrual phase down towards your period, and you'd think actually that would be the worst time, but that energy, that second half of the cycle, that energy is where we start to step out of rhythm with the very linear world that we live in, that grind culture, that rinse and repeat, get up and go energy. If we're not battling ourselves all the time, and we kind of allow ourselves to sort of slip into a little bit more of a reflective, slower energy, I think that's a really lovely time for creativity. And I try and lean into that more to find my creative voice, because I'm naturally less tolerant of the peopling aspect of stuff, and so I make more time for me. So I'm curious, like, has there been a time when you have found, it'd be difficult to say without like pinpointing it exactly, but do you have any suspicions around, is it like big energy in the first half where it comes, or do you find that like quiet reflective time?
I don't know. That's really interesting. I'm going to have to pay more attention. But one of the things that I do with my clients and with myself is try and get people to take that step and like stop hustling for creativity, because it's really like you have to make it happen. Like, if you sit and wait for the inspiration fairy, you will die of old age before anything happens. Like, you have to make it happen. But also, you don't need to be pushing for it all the time. So yeah, I think knowing when, I don't know, because like I say, I haven't tracked, so it's kind of difficult to figure out. But there are definitely times where I am fully, I don't know, just and I find it quite difficult to focus. And so that time I might go out for a walk with a notebook, or with my voice recorder or something like that, and then I can kind of, if I have ideas, because I always have ideas when I'm out and about, and most people, by the way, if you want to make a note and you're listening to this, you want to spark ideas, go and do something else, like move your body, go for a walk, take a notebook with you. If you sit in your desk and try and force ideas to come, ain't gonna happen. So, well, probably won't happen. So yeah, I don't know. I wonder. Yeah, did you say so? You said in the first half, so the kind of pre-menstrual phase is when you find that.
In the second half. So if you think of the cycle in two halves, like you've got period at sort of at one end and then ovulation at the other. So that's your like cycle dividers. And then sort of from your period to the sort of peak energy, so period to ovulation, that's rising energy. But I find the other half, that's where my mind stills, but so that would be ovulation back down to your period. So it's sort of waning energy, which, if we're always fighting ourselves and pushing and trying to meet the bar of expectation that we had for ourselves last week, that can feel really frustrating. But actually, with a little bit of awareness, I think it's nice to like, okay, I'm not stopping, I'm just changing gears here. And with that comes just a slower way of life. And I find that quite interesting for not, I don't like the word productivity at all, but in terms of what it really is, well, it's relative. What do you want to be productive for? And so
Yeah.
what is the best energy for that? So, but yeah, I do quite to like to lean it. I get more, my words get more flowery, fluffy, probably, and more like I could probably write it's got a different type of tone to my writing. I've noticed
Okay.
it's a
So
bit more like wordy and a bit more serious and a bit more like novelish, rather than in the first half I might be a bit more short and snipped and could be a bit more funnier. That's what I've noticed.
okay, that's interesting. So yeah, now you said that, then that probably, yeah, I do find myself probably being a bit more introspective then, and I might be like having ideas and like sketching ideas out rather than actually doing the detailed writing part of things. So that is interesting because yeah, like you say, it's kind of a step back and a slow down, and yeah, maybe I'm having some ideas, maybe I'm kind of thinking, oh, what can I do with this, what can I do with that, and then the other phase, I guess I found, and this ties in really interestingly with exercise as well, like I might go to the gym and be like thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't be feeling particularly strong or energetic because I'm feeling like bloated or heavy or whatever, and then I'll go to the gym and I'll lift a PB, and it's like, oh, and then I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna like get loads of stuff done, and kind of, yeah. So there are I guess distinct phases, but I just haven't ever really mapped them before, and I'm going to do that now.
It's so interesting.
Mm.
um I think one of the things that I'm very keen on always drawing awareness to is that with the cyclical frameworks, they're just a framework to plant a seed so people can like then be their own detective. There is such like a broad spectrum of what is considered normal, and I'm certainly, with the frameworks that I talk about, I always caveat them heavily because we all experience things so very differently. Like the first half of the cycle can be, upward rise of energy, can feel really nice and full of doing energy. If you're a neurodivergent person or quite sensitive, you might find that really overwhelming. Like some people around ovulation, rather than getting that one good week, it can be like really oppressive, really overwhelming and overstimulating because it's too much. And
I do
sometimes,
find
yeah, that is interesting to notice. I think that has a lot to do with how you go into things on the lead up. So if you had during your period, you didn't get much time for rest, and after that you went straight into like big task, big spoons, all the way to ovulation, then you get there and you're like, it's too much now. I need to actually just have a nap and just not. So I don't know if you've ever found that ovulation sometimes a bit more easy to pinpoint, like in terms of knowing where things are.
yeah, and it's again only in the last few years that I've really known what it was, because I would be like, because I have a lot of sensory issues, so like loud noises, like not substance, what do you call it, texture things,
Yeah.
smell, taste, all of those. So I've always been like, a certain smell or a certain sound, it's like, now I want to punch something. And it'll be like it'll be like a proper kind of violent, like, little fantasy in my head, and I'll be like, oh, that's really interesting. And it's only in the last few years that I've noticed that, oh, okay, that's occurring specifically, because they always bother me, but they don't always make me want to break things, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of that time when it's like, actually, this is so much that I'm either gonna have, like, I'm like completely shut down, or I'm going to throw something like my phone, and the screen no longer works very well,
Yeah.
because mostly because I've dropped it a lot, but occasionally I have thrown it across the room as well, so it's entirely my fault.
I totally relate. I hate the smell of burnt food, or it like cooking smells when it's burnt. And I did used to work in a kitchen, so I don't know if it's like a hangover from that, but I've always hated it. I do remember like living at home, and like if mum's ever burnt ever, I'll be like, I hate that smell. Massive overreaction to it. But I want to just, yeah, sometimes I feel like a vehement like dislike to it, and sometimes it's just like I don't like it, but I don't want to have like a violent episode. Oh, and which brings me to another point which I wanted to ask, slight sort of tangent from where we are. As like an autistic person with strong sensory sensitivities, are there times when you've experienced your like having a period like as a sensitivity? Because I found sometimes, and again it depends a lot, I think, with how we experience our cyclical energy, and also with how we experience our neurodivergence. Like if it's been like big spoons, like I don't know if anyone listening knows what spoons are, but just briefly, they were they're basically a way to measure energy currency. Was used by the chronic fatigue community, but it's been sort of adopted by the neurodivergent community. So the idea is you start the day with 20 spoons, and the name of the game is to get to the end of the day not having used all your spoons. Because then you're more likely headed towards some sort of shutdown meltdown situation. So that's what I mean when I talk about spoons. But if it's been like a lot of big spoon tasks before, just because life gets lifey sometimes and you can't do the things always in the way that you kind of designed them to, I find that actually my having a period can just be a sensory thing, not the bleeding part, but the cramp and the how I feel so disassociated from my body with the bloating. And yeah, I don't know if you find that.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think it's hideous. And I know that that's like not a very, modern thing to say, because it's like, oh, we should embrace all of the aspects of blah. It's like, no, it fucking sucks. So, and it sucks for me particularly because, and not for me particularly, but like for other people, I'm sure as well, but like they're extremely painful, like to the point where I've had to stop my husband calling an ambulance before because it's been that painful. And it wasn't until, again, fairly recently, 10 years or so, that I went to a doctor and he's like, that's not normal. Like, that's not a normal amount of pain. And I just thought it was because I've been ignored for so many years. And that's an entirely different topic, women's health being ignored. But yeah, I just find the whole thing, it's inconvenient. It makes me feel gross. Like you said, like, because it's not like inherently it's not gross, but it makes me feel gross because I have like, I know some neurodivergent people really struggle with having showers and things. I struggle with not having showers because the feeling of being icky for me so far outweighs, like I can't imagine not brushing my teeth because just the feeling of my mouth. So so that like I don't struggle with any of that kind of thing because the consequences of that would be so much worse than actually kind of doing it. So so there's all of that. It just makes me feel gross. And like you say, the whole kind of bloating and my body changing, I really resent it because it's just like, this isn't a body that I recognize. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. I can't do my trousers up because I'm just bloated. It's like, why? Like, why? That's so stupid. It's such a stupid thing for a body to do. And so I find it confusing and annoying and all of those things and just too much. And it's like, quite often I feel like I want to peel my skin off anyway. So like if I get too hot or if I'm wearing a texture that like, I can't wear high neck things or wool or anything like that, it just makes me want to literally peel myself like a banana. So that when I've got my period, it's that times 10. So yeah, it's really, I find it really difficult. and just really annoying and frustrating. And perhaps I should, when when I'm having a day like that, just be like, you know what, I'm not going to try and do anything today because I'm too distracted by all of this.
Oh my goodness, you just said so many things. I felt like I was like a nodding dog. I am the same. That's so interesting. So it's particularly interesting when you're having a low executive functioning day where getting in the shower feels hard, but actually you feel like your skin's on fire. Like, I hate sticky. I hate
no, sticky. Yeah.
I hate sticky or feeling sticky, or if my skin touches my skin too much, or any of those things. Like, before I go to
I don't want a thigh gap because I want to look like Kate Moss. I want a thigh gap because I cannot bear the feeling of my thighs touching each other in hot weather. It's got nothing to do with aesthetics and everything to do with my ridiculous sensory issues.
Yeah, if I could just not touch my own body ever, it would be amazing.
Yes.
That's so funny. And so true. And I think, and this is why I say it's so very different. And there is like an aspect of like embracing ourselves and our bodies and, our cycles. And I think that's just a bit surface level. It's not like the full picture. Like, I've worked with clients who have had like horrific periods where they've been in A&E and turning around and saying, oh, love your period, love your body. And
I can get in the bin. Honestly, I know this is like, honestly, so I'm gonna like have a little rant now, which you can absolutely edit out if you want to, but I'm just like, let's please tell the truth about stuff and allow people to have their own truths about things. It's like, if you want to go all mother goddess and embrace your whatever, then you go off, do that, and it's cool. It's like when people are like, getting older is a privilege. Of course it is. It absolutely beats the alternative. And also true, it sucks because things that I used to do easily in my 20s now hurt. And that sucks. Like, it just does. And so that's why I spend so much time at the gym. But it's like this idea that we always have to find the positive in anything, I find so toxic. It's like, no, actually, sometimes it's really helpful to just go, this sucks. And it's a realism thing. So I am anybody who's kind of screaming in A&E with awful periods and then at the same time going, oh, but everything's great. I'm like, you're lying. Like, you are lying.
Yeah.
And
it's toxic positivity.
It is toxic positivity, and it's not helpful. And it also, I think, reinforces this idea that women are supposed to suffer this. It's like, it's such bullshit, and it kind of feeds into that. And I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about patriarchy and, keeping women small and all the rest of it, which is probably a wider conversation than we have today. And you should totally talk to Sophie Lee about this. But yeah, it really makes me cross in a way that I hadn't realised how cross it made me until today. So yay, I've got something to rant about.
You're welcome. But it's very true. And I have like my working memories on my little post-it size note is trying to remember lots of things at the moment. But it's so, first of all, before the world all tried to tumble out all at the same time, period pain is common, but it is not normal, everybody. That is a fact. So it is common, but if you're chugging back painkillers and, taking time off regularly, that is not a normal thing. It is common, but it is not something we should suffer. And we do because of the gender pain gap, where we're taught, oh, it's just women's problems, we have to power through. It's not right that it's exactly what you said, basically, not to reiterate everything you just said, that would to be redundant, but the fact that it makes us feel like it's normal for us to suffer by just blanketing it over with positivity. I definitely did get to a stage of my client where we worked several things and she arrived at a place where she no longer feared her period. And that was different because previous it was like a dread and a fear of like, how am I going to do this? The pain's going to be intolerable. And there are things that you can do to shift your perspective, but that's not to say like you're going to be skipping around, like having a period party every time. I feel very fortunate. I don't have horrifically painful periods. And so that does allow me to kind of lean into the experience of having a period. But again, like if it's been too many spoons, like before my period, or I'm tired or run down, it hits me very differently. And I feel very overwhelmed by my body. And because let's just normalize having polarities with things. And I'm also a person, is again another conversation for another day. You know, I spent 10 years in my 20s, like with chronic eating disorders. Being a person who embraces the body that I live in, but some days, because I'm neurodivergent, some months having a period can be just a complete sensory overwhelm, and I despise being in my body, not because I'm not in a place where I can't embrace it. It's just I have a neurodivergent brain, and I find that my own body overwhelms me. And I just think it's really important to sort of have that conversation about it.
Yeah, and I think when you bring the neurodivergent aspect into it as well, it becomes really interesting because like I often describe myself as an alien in a meat suit because that's how I feel amongst other people sometimes, but also it's how I feel sometimes because humans are messy, like our bodies are messy and gross and disgusting. They're also incredible and amazing, and they can do, like, my body can lift 100 kilograms, which is so cool, and it can do trapeze and it can do gymnastics, which is amazing, but also it's gross, like it does gross stuff. And so like there is that kind of aspect of it. It's so like I feel like it doesn't belong to me sometimes, like all of the things that you just said and all the things that I said before. It's just really interesting, and I think it's like, I don't know, I don't think we talk about this stuff enough. I'm hoping that there are going to be people listening to this who are going, oh my god, I'd never felt like I could say that out loud, but now she said it, and it's like, actually that's how I feel as well. And it's like so nuanced because it's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing. It's a thing that we kind of experience in different ways. And you know, going back to the neurodivergent thing again, when I was talking to my psychiatrist about this, because she was asking about periods and things, and I have self-diagnosed myself with endometriosis as well, because I feel like that's a lot of the pain that I get. And she said it's a lot of autistic women also experience, you know, not normal periods, and like issues with endometriosis, issues with periods, painful periods, that kind of thing. So like they don't know if it's a causal relationship, but it's definitely a correlation. And so that's really, really interesting as well. And I think that's a really useful thing for people to be aware of, that, you know, that if you are neurodivergent and you also have issues with your periods, those two things, they might be connected. They don't really know, but you know, it's the correlation is quite strong.
So interesting. And I do think it's not a common conversation talking about neurodivergence and periods and the menstrual experience, as you know, which is why I'm now really just hell-bent on having that. But yeah, talking openly and naming those things, I think is helpful. So I knew you'd have an interesting perspective of of this, but even just beyond periods as well, just understanding that the rise of energy that people experience might not happen for you. It might just be really overwhelming, and that's sometimes why I like the it depends, because autistic and ADHD. So sometimes it hits right. The hyper focus is there. The peak of energy is there. You know, I mean, I might get swept up in it, and then forget to like eat, drink, sleep, all the things, and then be a puddle a week after. But sometimes it will hit right. But one of the reasons I like the premenstrual phase, and again, this is just for me, and it can impact so many people differently, especially if you have ADHD. The chance of experiencing PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, it is higher, and this will be a hellish time.
But 10x is everything.
Yeah. Yeah, but I quite like the premenstrual phase, because it just sometimes I can only describe it like I feel it in my body. I feel the day that my energy changes, and it feels like coming home to my body, and I just like it. It just feels nice. I feel like, after you get home after a long day, it's just that feeling, and I quite like it.
I'm going to start tracking. I love everything that you're doing, by the way. This is so important, because I've probably said the word period today more times than I ever have in the last year, because it's taken me because it's such a, I grew up with such a lot of shame around the whole idea of it, that you didn't say it, you whispered it, and all of that kind of thing. So I just think that what you're doing is freaking awesome. And these
Thank you.
conversations that you're having are so important and really interesting as well. And it's like, I can't believe people haven't done more research on this, because it's so interesting to, because I kind of do something similar with my clients, nothing to do with menstrual cycles, because I don't really know anything about it. But I do say to them, when they're starting to plan writing a book, it's like, okay, spend a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And now I'm going to start telling them to spend a bit longer. Just noting, like, when do you feel most creative, when do you feel most motivated to do, or when do you find it easiest to motivate yourself to do stuff, when do you find you have the most ideas. Look at the times of the day as well as the times of the week and the month and
Yep.
the seasons as well. Like, look at all of this stuff, and don't kind of try and have a routine that is so rigidly fixed that you don't allow yourself to change, because like I said, there's no point in banging your head against the desk for an entire day. That's pointless. Like, it makes you miserable, makes you angry, it makes you tired, and it makes you feel a lot of shame about it. So it's like, so I always get people to kind of work with their energy, but I'd never really thought about it in terms of the menstrual cycle before. So this is gonna be so much to think about.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and let me know what people say, because I do find it fascinating. But to your point, we are wrapped in cycles. We have this our circadian rhythm, so that's our sleep wake cycle. We'll find different things work differently at different times, dependent if you might be a night owl. Or we have the week, the month, our menstrual cycle. We'll have the seasons, like you say, our life cycle. It will all hit very differently, and I think there's an in terms of just going back, in terms of like getting older as well, I think it's a nice reminder to kind of release yourself from the expectations of who you were, maybe even like 10 years ago, maybe even yesterday. We kind of just show up with this like different, we're different every day. And there's so many different things that impact that. And I don't know, I have definitely been guilty, and I don't know if it's a little bit of black and white thinking or not very good on the flexible thinking, but like, I've done that before, I used to do it this way, why can't I do it now, and get really frustrated with myself. But like I say, there's so many different things that impact like our mood, motivation and mindset, menstrual cycle being one of them. And I think it can be helpful to kind of release ourselves from that expectation.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Is like, just because you could do it yesterday doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it today, or in the same way. Maybe you might still be able
Yeah.
to do it, but maybe in a different way. And yeah, I forget that. And I think kind of that all or nothing thinking is quite common among neurodivergent people as well. So, like, one of the things that I did a couple of weeks ago was I didn't have time to go to the gym and do my full workout. And, past me would have been like, oh, there's no point in going because I haven't got time to do the full workout. And I made myself go anyway, because I was like, well, I can do half of the workout. That's better than none of the workout. And I went and I lifted a PB, and it was just like, so there's that kind of, yeah, it really is worth kind of looking at your all or nothingness, in terms of what you can do, for creativity, exercise, but also for just, humaning, like being a person is like, maybe today's going to be different. Well, today is going to be different from yesterday. There's probably reasons for that, and that's okay. So yeah, I love this idea of letting go of expectations of who you're supposed to be based on who you were
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Very agreed. Before I go on a massive side quest, I was just like, oh, we're just approaching our sort of time. I was like, oh no, it's going. I could go big, but it is very true. And just to say, I think it's quite a nice comparison. Looking at it's something very physical, like exercise. I'm the same. So with my running, yoga, and all the things, like it is quite obvious when you have the energy or you don't. But I think when it's with writing, with creativity, it's intangible actually,
Yeah.
and there's even it's harder to define. Like, well, what exactly was it that you could do yesterday? Sit down and write a page, or have ideas, or it's much harder to kind of like label in that way.
Yeah.
So, of all the things that you have found helpful in your writing, like what is your go-to process for like if you're just not feeling it?
just get out of the space that I'm in, because there is, there's no circumstance ever anywhere where continuing to bang your head against the wall is going to give you anything but a headache, right? So I just find that if I have been sitting for more than, and I will give it a go, because one of the things that irritates me, and this is going to get me hate, particularly in the neurodivergent community, is when people are like, oh, I can't do it because X, Y, Z, and it's they've spent no time trying, right? And that really does my head in, because I am that person and I know what's possible if you are willing to experiment and find out. So but yeah, just sitting there, like if I've spent a little bit of time and I'm like, this is not happening, I will get up and I will go and do something else, because there's just no point. And apart from anything else, and this is neuroscience as well, so this isn't just me and my opinion, but if you move your body and change your state, it changes the way your brain works. Like, it changes the connections that your brain makes, it changes how you think, it changes your belief systems, it changes everything. And so like we think of ourselves as like having a brain, having a body, it's all connected, like it's all the same thing. And they're starting to find that with like gut health and mood and all the rest of it, like it's all connected. And so my biggest thing is, if you are struggling to do something and you absolutely have to get it done today, or you desperately want to get it done today, get out of your seat and go for a walk and take a notebook with you or take a voice recorder with you, and just like, don't even force it, just have it in your pocket, because then you can kind of be walking along, preferably in trees, because trees are magical, and preferably in sunshine, but UK, so who knows, and just see what happens, see what connections you make, see what pops into your head when you stop trying to force it. Because although you have to put the effort in and you have to create the circumstances by which you can write and think, if you're trying to force it, it makes things really difficult, because all you can think of then is, I can't do this thing. And if you're thinking, I can't do this thing, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you let go of the outcome and it's like, okay, maybe I'm not going to write anything today, but what I am going to do is give myself the best shot at it by doing something else, like maybe going for a walk, maybe going to the gym, maybe, taking a shower, doing whatever it is that you want to do, watching a movie, like go watch Netflix, because that is a form of, inspiration. You'll something will come, something will happen. So just letting go of the outcome and changing your state, I think, are two of the biggest things that I will recommend people do.
This feeds so much into everything that, yes, all of those things. And it is true, I say a lot, I use a meat suit reference, but I say I used to be a person that dragged their body around like a meat suit along for the ride, but then I discovered that my brain and my body are connected, so I can't just like drag it around like it. And it is all like a complete system. Our menstrual cycle is part of that, and even like if we're stressed and things, like stress is one of the like biggest things for like causing cycle irregularities. They could be shorter, longer, dependent on stress. That's a whole other subject. But yes, it's all to do with the nervous system. No one functions well when they think they're under constant threat of a lion attack. No. So we do need to give ourselves like space, and that change of perspective feeds into this also into like somatics and how somatics work, and embodying different things differently in different ways in the body, depending on the outcome you want. So I love that. I've loved every second of this conversation. It's been wonderful.
It's been so great. Thank you so much for having me.
So what would you like people to know? Where can people find you? What have you got going on?
Okay, first question. What would I like people to know? I would like people to know that they are creative. Like, whether you think you are or not, you are. It is a condition of being human. Humans are creative creatures. It's how we have got to the place where we are and destroyed everything in the world. It's creativity. And because of that creativity, we can also fix everything if we get rid of billionaires. So there's that. Like, you are creative, and you have good ideas, and your voice is worth listening to. So that's the thing that I want people to know. Where people can find me is at moxiebooks.co.uk /notes in the margin, and notes in the margin has little hyphens between each word. That is where you can get on my email list, which is the best place to keep up with me because the algorithm hates us all.
Yes.
But if you
and
like
your
the
newsletters are the best. I love them.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And yeah, if you do like social media, it's a necessary evil, I think. I can be found on LinkedIn at Vicky Quinn Fraser, where I am posting most days, sometimes sensibly, sometimes not.
Amazing. Thank you, Vicky, very much for being on the Period Press and my first human guest.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me, Samantha. This has been a delight and I've really enjoyed myself.
Thank you. Bye.